Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely mind-blowing narrative from our source material where the hard, precise data of particle physics collides with ancient Islamic cosmology. It's a story all about the absolute center of our solar system, the sun. And we'll be looking at a fascinating hypothesis that pretty much questions everything we thought we knew about its seemingly chaotic energy. So let's jump right in and set the stage for a scientific mystery unlike anything else. Right off the bat, our source material introduces this really compelling central hypothesis, and it's pulled straight from an ancient text, Surah Al-Mulk in the Quran. Now, the crucial piece of the puzzle here revolves around a very specific Arabic concept mentioned in the verse, tafawut, which translates to flawlessness, consistency, or just an absolute lack of disparity. The narrative centers around Dr. Jamila Afzal. She's a data analyst who essentially looked at this verse and posed a massive, bold question. If there is truly no tafawut in the creation of the universe, could that imply a literal, measurable, zero fluctuation state in the thermal radiation of a star like our sun?
Section 1. The Super K Neutrino Mystery.
To actually test this, the story drags us deep underground to one of the most incredible scientific facilities on the planet, the Super Kamiokande Observatory in Japan. You'll usually hear it called Super K. I want you to picture this massive underground tank holding 40,000 tons of ultra-pure water, completely lined with 11,000 glowing golden photomultiplier tubes. This is where we meet our two central figures. On one side, you have Dr. Jamila, the lead data analyst totally driven by her hypothesis of flawless zero fluctuation. On the flip side is her colleague, Dr. Takeshi Tanaka. Takeshi is a brilliant, highly skeptical neutrino physicist. His view is anchored strictly in the standard solar model. That model says the sun is inherently noisy, right? It's driven by chaotic 11-year sunspot cycles. So to him, this idea of zero fluctuation, or zero tafawut, just has no place in the messy, violent reality of astrophysics. But wait, before we look at the data, what are they even measuring in that giant tank of water? Well, the answer is solar neutrino flux. Neutrinos are these incredibly tiny, basically ghost-like particles, and boron-8 neutrinos specifically act as a direct, uncorrupted signature of the nuclear reactions happening deep inside the sun's core. They literally fly straight out of the sun's center, right through space and into the Super K detector. Because of that, measuring their flow rate, or flux, is the absolute ultimate metric for understanding the stability of the sun's deepest, most intense fires far below its turbulent surface. Moving right along, Section 2, tracking the entropy rate. Okay, let's dive into the actual anomaly that Jamila uncovered when she started crunching the numbers on these ghost particles. And she didn't just glance at a few days of data, she went all in. She analyzed a massive 20-year time series, spanning from the year 2000 all the way to 2020, tracking the continuous daily average flux of these neutrinos. She then converted all this data to track the thermodynamic entropy production rate. Essentially, she was hunting for that expected chaos, the standard deviation and fluctuations you'd expect to mirror the sun's wild surface behavior over 2 decades. But here is the number that completely flipped the script: less than 0.2%. When Jamila looked at the variance, the deviation from the expected average over those whole 20 years, she found this incredibly strange flatness. The standard deviation of the core's neutrino flux was steadily below 0.2%. To put that into perspective for a second, the sun's surface sunspot cycles fluctuate at around 0.5% or more. The core, it turns out, was astonishingly stable. It was practically ignoring all that chaotic drama happening on the surface above it. To really visualize the stability, Jamila ran a power spectrum analysis of the entropy production rate, and she found literally zero noise below 0.000001 hertz. Now, in thermodynamics, that points to a long-term thermodynamic equilibrium that honestly just shouldn't be possible for a burning star. To make this tangible, the source material explains that Jamila used this technique called sonification to turn the data into audio. When she played it through a speaker, it didn't sound like roaring static, like you might expect. It produced a perfectly steady, flat hum. Amazingly, the text notes that this steady audio envelope perfectly matched the flawless, unbroken Arabic pronunciation of the word tafawut, without a single dip or peak in the sound wave. Absolutely wild. Which brings us to Section 3. The synthetic sun fails. Of course, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and Dr. Takeshi wasn't just going to abandon the standard solar model without a fight. Takeshi confidently set out to stress test Jamila's findings using standard materialistic assumptions. He decided to build a synthetic sun. His steps were pretty straightforward. Step 1, simulate a 20-year neutrino flux matching the exact same averages. Step 2, forcefully inject the known 11-year sunspot cycle data into the model. And Step 3, apply the entropy production rate to see if it would flatline like Jamila's data or if it would show the expected chaos. Takeshi was absolutely certain his synthetic model would prove that the sun is naturally noisy. But here's the catch. The synthetic sun failed. Let's compare exactly why. Takeshi's model resulted in a 1% variance with random, chaotic fluctuations. There was zero deviation. Jamila ended up pointing out the fatal flaw in his synthetic model. He had modeled the noisy surface. He linked the neutrino output directly to surface sunspots. But in reality, the production of boron-8 neutrinos in the sun's core depends on the proton-proton chain reaction, and that is tied to the core's temperature. According to helioseismology, the real sun's core temperature has remained staggeringly stable for 4.6 billion years, completely unbothered by the chaotic surface spots. Takeshi's model just totally missed the ancient, deep stability of the real sun. Now, Section 4, Returning the Statistical Gaze. What's genuinely fascinating here is how these ancient words map so directly onto hardcore modern statistical methods. Jamila actually pushed the analysis further by calculating the Hurst exponent of the real sun's data. Now, a score near 0.50 would indicate random chaotic behavior, but the actual data? It returned a value of 0.01. In STOTS, this indicates near white noise, just an absolute absence of long-term instability. It represents a literal zero-flaw state. In the context of the Quranic verse, this complete lack of instability perfectly mirrors the absence of futur, which translates to crocks or flaws. This realization is where it really hits Dr. Takeshi hard. The narrative describes this intense, late-night session in the Super K control room. Driven purely by disbelief, Takeshi ran the data himself. He divided that 20-year dataset into 10,000 distinct time windows, some lasting a month, some a year, some stretching to 5 years. He checked the variance 10,000 separate times, and every single time, without fail, the variance stayed consistently under 0.2%. The source material draws this brilliant parallel here. Takeshi's rigorous statistical repetition was the mathematical equivalent of the Quranic command to return the gaze again and again. And just as the verse predicted, his statistical gaze returned totally exhausted, finding absolutely no flaws or fluctuations in the core's harmony. Finally, Section 5, the flawless thermodynamic harmony. The whole story peaks at this highly dramatic moment. During her keynote presentation at the International Neutrino Physics Conference, Jamila dropped a stunning visual demonstration right there on the main stage. She basically overlapped two seemingly unrelated graphs. The first was the thermodynamic phase space of the sun's core, that super K entropy flatline showing less than 0.2% variance. The second graph was the audio envelope of the recitation of Surah al-Mulk, verses 3 and 4, which also showed zero fluctuation in its structure. The breathtaking moment was the structural harmony. The physical, thermodynamic data of the sun's core was literally a 99.99% match with the audio envelope of the ancient verse describing a flawless creation. The response from the scientific community in our story is just profound. Dr. Takeshi, the staunch materialist, publicly stood up after her speech and admitted that the data was undeniable. The core's 4.6 billion year stability perfectly mirrors the concept of zero flaw presented in the verse. This actually led to the launch of the almost Solar Neutrino project right there at Super K. And to ensure this wasn't just some local, one-off anomaly, the findings underwent massive cross-verification. Observatories globally, including Borjaxino in Italy and the SNO Plus detector over in Canada, ran the exact same entropy analysis. The result? They all confirmed the exact same zero deviation. Which brings us to the really profound conclusion of our explainer today. The source mentions that Jamila captures this whole incredible journey in a book, and she ends it with a powerful reflection, just as the blue Cherenkov radiation of the neutrino detectors fades into the golden light of the sun. She asks, will you look at the sun's heat with your heart, or just measure it in calories? It's such a striking question, right? It challenges us to consider exactly how we view the universe, whether we only see the cold, raw data of entropy and heat, or if we can step back and also appreciate the intricate, perhaps even poetic stability that literally holds our solar system together. It's a brilliant intersection of statistical science and ancient philosophy, and it's definitely something to think about the next time you feel the sun on your face. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the thermodynamic harmony of solar neutrinos.